What just happened with Taylor Swift and her brand new album, Life of a Showgirl, is absolutely wild. We're talking about a pop icon worth over $1 billion, dropping lyrics about how it doesn't feel so glamorous to be me, and somehow turning that into one of the biggest internet meltdowns of 2025. Within hours of release, Life of a Showgirl was trending across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, but not for the reasons Taylor hoped. Fans are calling her out for being tone-deaf, critics are dissecting microaggressions line by line, and even loyal Swifties are debating whether this might be the first time Taylor's fame has worked against her. And it gets even messier, because some fans think the album's hidden meanings are actually diss tracks aimed at Charli XCX, while others swear it's Taylor's most personal but most unrelatable project yet. From secret Easter eggs and Times Square billboards to viral accusations of privilege, performative sadness, and a possible feud with Charli, this is the Life of a Showgirl story the headlines won't tell you. But here's the real question. Did Taylor Swift just drop the boldest album of her career? Or did she finally prove that the life of a showgirl isn't as glamorous as it seems? Because once you hear what fans uncovered, it's going to change the way you see her entire image. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button real quick. I promise, this video won't try to glamorize the struggle or sell you $1 million bathtub moment. Just pure pop culture chaos. Zero tone-deaf lyrics. When Taylor Swift first announced Life of a Showgirl, it was supposed to be a victory lap, not a PR nightmare. She dropped the announcement in the most unexpected way possible, not through a press release or glossy magazine cover, but during a casual chat on her fiancé, Travis Kelce's podcast, New Heights. In true Taylor fashion, she framed it as a love letter to performing, a celebration of the chaos, exhaustion, and euphoria of being on stage night after night. She described how the idea came to her while flying between European tour stops, performing 3 nights in a row, then spending her off days in studios across Sweden and London. According to her, Life of a Showgirl was supposed to capture that energy, the glamour, the sweat, and the blurry line between who she is on stage and who she is when the lights go out. On paper, that sounds poetic, but in execution, things went off the rails faster than anyone could have imagined. Because right from the start, the album's rollout had that unmistakable Taylor Easter egg energy. Fans began dissecting everything, from her outfits on tour to random emojis she posted. Spotify even got in on the hype, setting up an immersive Life of a Showgirl pop-up in New York City. There were mirrored rooms, peach-colored props, and walls covered with supposed lyric hints written in lipstick. It was classic Taylor, mysterious, glamorous, and over-the-top in all the ways her fans love. But that's also where things started to go sideways. Because right in the middle of the display was a single line scribbled across a mirror that read, "Oftentimes, it doesn't feel so glamorous to be me." That one sentence, one lyric, triggered an internet explosion. In less than 24 hours, screenshots of it went viral, TikTok videos started racking up millions of views, and Twitter threads tore it apart from every possible angle. Some fans thought it was deep and vulnerable. Others said it was the most tone-deaf thing she's ever written. A billionaire pop star complaining about not feeling glamorous while standing on a diamond-encrusted stage in front of 80,000 people.
And just like that, the narrative around Life of a Showgirl shifted completely. It stopped being about the music and started being about Taylor Swift's privilege, public image, and how disconnected she might actually be from the fans who built her empire. The same people who once cried to All Too Well, 10-minute version, were now joking that Taylor should drop a remix called It's Hard Being Rich, feature my private jet. But what came next was even worse, because the backlash didn't stop at the lyric. It spiraled into accusations of tone deafness, hypocrisy, and something much bigger. And when the Times Square billboard went up, that one lyric went from controversial to career-defining. When that Times Square billboard lit up with Taylor's lyric, Oftentimes, it doesn't feel so glamorous to be me. The internet practically caught fire. This wasn't just a lyric drop. It was a statement projected across one of the most expensive advertising spaces in the world, a place brands fight over to show off wealth, power, and status. And here was Taylor Swift, one of the richest artists on the planet, using that space to tell the world how unglamorous her life feels. To a lot of people, that was it, the final straw. One fan tweeted, "She's saying this while literally buying out Times Square. Girl, please."
Another wrote, "It must be so hard to be a billionaire crying in your mansion. Stay strong, queen." And of course, TikTok ran with it. Memes flooded For You pages within hours. People pretending to suffer while holding luxury handbags. Captions like, "It's not glamorous being me," flashing over sparkly edits. It became a cultural moment, but not the one Taylor wanted. Because this wasn't being read as vulnerability, it was being read as delusion. For years, Taylor Swift built her image around storytelling that felt intimate, relatable, and self-aware. Songs like The Archer or Anti-Hero showed her as flawed, reflective, even self-deprecating. But Life of a Showgirl? It felt different. Fans weren't seeing the same level of empathy or irony. They saw someone who'd become too self-absorbed to notice how detached she sounded. One viral post summed it up perfectly. "We used to cry with Taylor. Now we're rolling our eyes at her." And while that might sound harsh, it revealed something deeper: audience fatigue. People are tired of celebrities turning their privilege into poetic suffering. The world's dealing with rising prices, burnout, and economic stress, and hearing a billionaire sing about exhaustion hit differently in 2025. Even major outlets joined the conversation. Think pieces popped up overnight. Has Taylor Swift finally lost touch? And when pop stardom becomes a prison, everyone suddenly had an opinion, and everyone wanted to be heard. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because while Taylor's PR team tried to spin it as a misunderstood artistic statement, insiders claim that the billboard itself was a calculated marketing move. According to multiple reports, that lyric wasn't leaked or found by fans. It was intentionally placed on the Times Square display as part of her Spotify partnership, meaning the outrage wasn't an accident, it was part of the campaign. If that's true, it means Taylor didn't just underestimate her audience, she weaponized their reactions. And if there's one thing the internet hates more than tone-deaf lyrics, it's being played. But if the Billboard backlash was bad, what came next made it look like a warm-up, because the fans didn't just mock Taylor, they turned on her. After the Times Square lyric went viral, something that almost never happens actually did. The Swifties, the most loyal, dedicated fan base on the internet, started turning on Taylor Swift. At first, it was just sarcastic memes. You know, edits of Taylor holding a champagne glass with captions like, "So hard being me in my $30 million penthouse." But then the tone shifted. People weren't just joking anymore. They were genuinely frustrated. It felt like Taylor had crossed some invisible line between relatable artist and unreachable celebrity. Think about it. For over a decade, Taylor's entire brand has been built on connection. Those diary-style lyrics that made her feel like your best friend who just happens to headline stadiums. But now, fans were saying she sounded more like a billionaire influencer doing a sad girl aesthetic for engagement. Tweets started going viral with brutal honesty. She's singing about how fame isn't glamorous while flying private and wearing 20K dresses. Or, if you hate the spotlight so much, why buy a billboard to say it? And those comments weren't just from trolls, they were from longtime fans.
People who'd followed her since Fearless and Speak Now were suddenly questioning whether the old Taylor really can't come to the phone right now because she's gone.
On TikTok, creators started breaking down her lyrics like they were case files. Videos with titles like "Why Taylor's New Album Feels Fake" and "When Vulnerability Becomes Marketing" started blowing up. And that's the thing. It wasn't just that people disliked the music, they felt manipulated. Like every confession, every sad lyric, every behind-the-scenes quote was perfectly designed to keep the machine running. Even entertainment journalists started noticing the shift. Publications that used to praise her emotional honesty began using words like performative, detached, and self-indulgent. One viral op-ed put it bluntly. Taylor Swift has spent years writing about the pain of fame, but when you turn pain into profit long enough, it stops feeling real. And that right there is what hit the hardest. Because Taylor wasn't just being accused of being out of touch, she was being accused of selling relatability as a product. Of course, her diehard fans came to her defense. They argued that Taylor's just being honest, that fame really does take a toll no matter how rich you are. They flooded Twitter with threads about burnout, loneliness, and the pressure of always being watched. And they're not wrong. Fame can break anyone. But the issue wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Because in a world where people are struggling to pay rent, hearing a billionaire lament about not feeling glamorous just doesn't hit the same. It's like she forgot the very people who made her career aren't living in private jets. They're streaming her songs on the bus to work. And that disconnect, that growing gap between Taylor Swift, the artist, and Taylor Swift, the brand, became impossible to ignore. Before we go further, smash that subscribe button right now. Unlike Taylor's Billboard, it's free, and I promise you won't regret it halfway through the song. But the backlash didn't stop with the billionaire tears jokes, because soon fans started digging into the lyrics themselves. And that's when the accusations got serious. Just when it felt like the drama around Life of a Showgirl couldn't get any more intense, it did. Because that lyric about not feeling glamorous was only the beginning. The deeper fans listened, the more they noticed something off. Not just about the message, but about the language itself. There's one particular track that started it all. A verse where Taylor sings, "I'm not a bad bee, this isn't savage, it's classic." On the surface, it sounds harmless. Another tongue-in-cheek line about staying classy in a world obsessed with confidence anthems. But for a lot of listeners, especially women of color, it didn't sit right. The way she contrasted bad bee culture with her own identity made it sound like she was drawing a line, separating herself from a style, a sound, and a confidence that didn't belong to her. Within days, entire TikTok threads appeared with titles like "Taylor Swift and the microaggression nobody's talking about." Cultural critics broke it down line by line, arguing that Taylor was subtly positioning herself as above a culture largely shaped by Black women in pop and hip-hop. Some even pointed out that her lyric about her partner's past type made it sound like she was comparing herself to women of color in a way that felt dismissive. Now, to be fair, it's entirely possible Taylor didn't intend it that way. But that's the thing about language in 2025. Context matters. And when you're the most powerful white woman in music, people will notice when your lyrics echo old stereotypes, even unintentionally. On X, formerly Twitter, one fan summed it up perfectly. Taylor's not racist, but she's not reading the room either. And that sentiment spread fast. Clips from the song went viral with comments like, "This lyric aged like milk," and "She needs a new PR team yesterday." People started referencing her past controversies, the Kanye feud, her history of selective activism,
And the way she sometimes speaks out after a movement has already gone mainstream. It painted a picture of someone who's socially aware, but always a beat behind. Music reviewers jumped in too. A viral video essay called Taylor Swift's Glamour Problem argued that Life of a Showgirl wasn't just about fame, it was about control. Control of image, control of narrative, control of who gets to define feminine power. And in that process, some argued, she unintentionally reinforced the very stereotypes she used to challenge. What made things worse was the timing, because all this was happening while her fiancé, Travis Kelce's dating history, and her own song references to it were trending at the same time. People started drawing connections, pointing out how her lyrics seemed defensive, almost as if she was trying to prove she was different from the women who came before her. And when you mix that with an audience hypersensitive to issues of representation and privilege, the explosion was inevitable. Now, Taylor's fans, of course, came rushing in to defend her. They argued that critics were reading too deeply into the line, that it was meant as a playful nod to her personality, not a coded jab to...
And while Taylor stayed silent, letting the music speak for itself, the silence spoke volumes. Because the longer she said nothing, the more people filled in the blanks. And the internet's imagination is the most powerful PR force on Earth. But there was another name popping up more and more in these debates, Charli XCX, because fans started connecting dots between Life of a Showgirl and Brat, and suddenly everyone was asking the same question. Was Taylor subtly throwing shade at Charli? As the chaos around Life of a Showgirl spread, another name kept popping up again and again, Charli XCX. Because just weeks before Taylor dropped her album, Charli had unleashed her neon green monster of a record, Brat, the project that basically redefined what pop rebellion sounds like. Where Brat was raw, messy, self-aware, and a little unhinged, Taylor's album felt polished, controlled, and meticulously choreographed. So naturally, fans started comparing the two. And not just for the sound, it was the vibe. Charli's album was chaotic confidence. Taylor's felt like a stage performance about chaos. It didn't help that Charli XCX herself had to hop online and say, "There are no diss tracks on Brat." That comment alone sent the internet spiraling, because if there aren't any diss tracks, why did she need to clarify that in the first place? People immediately started connecting dots. Was she talking about Taylor? Was Visions secretly aimed at the billionaire pop star aesthetic? The theories went wild.
TikTok detectives pulled up side-by-side lyric comparisons. Lines from Brat like, "I make art, you make content," were being stitched next to Life of a Showgirl quotes like, "It doesn't feel so glamorous to be me." And suddenly, it wasn't just about Taylor's album, it was about what she represented. Charli was being hailed as the voice of authenticity, the artist who gets it. Taylor? She was being framed as the industry machine that refuses to admit it's out of touch. You could literally feel the cultural split happening in real time. Team Brat versus Team Showgirl. The minimalist party girl aesthetic versus the stadium tour perfectionist. One fan wrote, "Charli is what Taylor thinks she is when she says she's self-aware." Another replied, "Taylor is doing Broadway when the world wants warehouse raves." And whether you agreed or not, the memification of it all was unstoppable. What made this rivalry so fascinating is that neither woman ever said anything about it directly. There were no diss tweets, no interviews throwing shade, just vibes. But in the internet era, vibes are all it takes. The silence became the headline, and marketing became marketing. Meanwhile, even critics started joining the conversation. Pitchfork described Charli's Brat as a chaotic mirror held up to the pop industry, while calling Taylor's Life of a Showgirl a beautifully crafted reflection that refuses to admit it's a mirror. In other words, one album felt like art, the other felt like PR.
But here's where things get really ironic. Both artists are essentially talking about the same thing, the tension between fame and self-image, between art and performance. The difference? Charli embraced the mess. Taylor tried to choreograph it. And that contrast, messy honesty versus manicured perfection, is exactly what made fans start asking an uncomfortable question. Has Taylor Swift's need for control finally made her unrelatable? But even beyond Charli, the controversy around Life of a Showgirl exposed something bigger, something that goes way past pop beefs and chart positions. Because underneath all the drama lies a deeper problem that no amount of diamond microphones can hide: the privilege problem. By this point, Life of a Showgirl wasn't just an album. It was a social experiment in what happens when the world's most famous pop star tries to sound relatable. And the results were brutal. The backlash had grown from memes and TikToks into full-blown cultural critique because people weren't just laughing at Taylor. They were analyzing her. Peace thinkings, YouTube essays, and Reddit threads all started circling the same question: at what point does wealth make your art lose meaning? Taylor's fans used to love her because she felt human. She cried, she lost, she wrote about heartbreak, and she built a career on honesty. But now, with lyrics about exhaustion, canceled friends, and fame fatigue, people couldn't help but notice the disconnect. It's hard to take a line like, "It's not as glamorous as it seems," seriously when it's coming from someone who owns multiple private jets and casually shut down entire cities with her world tour. One viral post said it best: "We're not mad that Taylor's rich, we're mad she's pretending she isn't." And that line hit a nerve.
Because Life of a Showgirl didn't just show Taylor's wealth, it showed her relationship to it. She wanted to seem grounded, introspective, humble. But when you mix that with multi-million-dollar sponsorships and stadium-sized branding, it feels less like authenticity and more like a marketing aesthetic. That's when the privilege problem really took over the conversation. It wasn't that fans wanted Taylor to apologize for her success, they just wanted her to acknowledge it. There's a difference between saying, "Fame is exhausting," and "Fame isolates you even when you have everything." One sounds like a complaint, the other sounds like truth. Even her political references started rubbing people the wrong way. There's that lyric where she says, "I like my friends canceled," which fans quickly decoded as a reference to hanging out with MAGA-aligned celebrities. And suddenly, people were debating whether Taylor's stay-out-of-politics stance was quietly hypocritical. Because for years, she's been praised for using her platform for empowerment. But here, she was basically saying, "My friends can believe whatever they want. It doesn't affect me." And that, in 2025, was enough to spark an explosion.
A viral TikTok broke it down like this: when you have that much power, neutrality isn't neutral. It's privilege. And that's exactly what fans felt. That Taylor was no longer writing from the perspective of an underdog trying to find her voice. She was writing from the penthouse, looking down at the chaos below. It's a fascinating paradox. The more powerful she becomes, the more disconnected her art sounds. And the irony? She probably knows that. That's what makes Life of a Showgirl so complex. It's the sound of someone trying to feel human again while living a life that no longer allows it. But the internet isn't exactly known for nuance. To most people, she wasn't a showgirl searching for meaning. She was a billionaire writing sad songs about champagne problems. Again. And as the debate got louder, something surprising started happening. Because even though the criticism was relentless, Taylor's fans didn't vanish. In fact, they doubled down, splitting the internet in two. By now, the Life of a Showgirl controversy had outgrown the album itself. It wasn't just a pop debate, it was a full-blown cultural split. Because suddenly, you couldn't just like or dislike Taylor Swift anymore. You had to pick a side.
On one side, there were the die-hard Swifties, defending her with the same energy people usually reserve for Marvel superheroes. They argued that Taylor was just being honest, that she's allowed to feel exhausted, overwhelmed, or even unglamorous, no matter how rich she is. To them, the criticism felt like another chapter in a long history of people refusing to let women in power show vulnerability. They flooded X and TikTok with hashtags like Protect Taylor and Let Artists Be Human, insisting the backlash was rooted in double standards. Because let's be real, male artists have been writing about fame fatigue for decades without getting called tone-deaf. But on the other side were the critics, commentators, and X fans who saw it differently. They weren't angry because Taylor was being emotional. They were angry because it felt rehearsed. They pointed out how everything, from the Times Square billboard to the lyric reveal pop-up, was carefully choreographed to look raw. It was authenticity, prepackaged and sold at full retail price. And that realization hit people hard because it wasn't just about Taylor Swift anymore. It was about how all celebrity culture works in 2025. The illusion of intimacy.
The monetization of relatability. The constant balancing act between being seen and being real. Commentary channels went wild dissecting it. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to the Taylor Swift paradox. Music journalists described her as a case study in how modern fame eats itself alive. And honestly, they weren't wrong. One viral headline from The Guardian said it best. Taylor Swift built an empire by letting us in. Now, she's trapped inside it. It summed up exactly what everyone was feeling. Because the more Taylor tried to humanize herself, the more manufactured she appeared. Every lyric, every aesthetic, every vulnerable confession came across like it had been cleared by a focus group. And yet, despite all that backlash, Life of a Showgirl didn't flop. It actually debuted at #1 on every major chart. The controversy made it bigger. The debates fueled streams. The think pieces fueled engagement. And the memes practically did her promo for free. So, in a twisted way, Taylor won. Even when she lost the internet's sympathy, she gained its attention. And in the digital age, attention is the only real currency left.
Still, that win came with a cost. Because now, no matter what Taylor Swift releases next, it'll be viewed through this new lens. Not as art, but as strategy. And that's the tragedy of being too good at playing the game. Eventually, people stop believing you're really playing that every pop star will have to face sooner or later. When you turn your life into a performance, what happens when the audience stops clapping? At this point, Life of a Showgirl stopped being just another pop album. It became a mirror, not just for Taylor Swift, but for all of us watching her. Because the truth is, the album's not just about fame. It's about what happens when fame becomes identity, and when art turns into an endless cycle of performance, feedback, and damage control. Taylor Swift has always been a master of narrative. She knows how to turn heartbreak into history, how to transform pain into poetry. But what Life of a Showgirl revealed is the price of that mastery. When every confession becomes content, when every apology becomes a lyric, and every public reaction becomes part of the rollout, you start to wonder where the real person ends and the persona begins.
And that's the tragedy of it all. Because deep down, this album feels like Taylor trying to reclaim her humanity, to say, hey, I'm still a person beneath all this glitter. But instead of feeling raw, it came off like another costume change in a never-ending show. She's not just performing for us anymore, she's performing the idea of performing. One critic put it perfectly. Taylor Swift doesn't sing about fame. She sings from inside of it. And that's what makes Life of a Showgirl both fascinating and heartbreaking, because she's self-aware enough to see the prison she's built, but too famous to ever escape it. She can't live quietly, she can't speak freely, and she can't release a lyric without a million people decoding it like scripture. So she keeps dancing, smiling, and writing about the very cage she can't leave. Maybe that's why this whole era feels so uncomfortable. Not because she's wrong, but because she's right.
Because if even Taylor Swift, with all the money, control, and power in the world, still feels trapped by fame, what does that say about everyone else chasing it? That's the uncomfortable genius of Life of a Showgirl. It's both the dream and the nightmare. The proof that you can win everything and still feel like you're performing for your life. So yeah, maybe the lyric, "It doesn't feel so glamorous to be me," wasn't tone-deaf after all. Maybe it was a confession, one so brutally honest that even her own fans weren't ready to hear it. Because in the end, Taylor Swift didn't just make an album, she made a warning, wrapped in sequins, dressed in fame, and disguised as pop. And whether you loved it or hated it, one thing's for sure, she got us all watching the show. If you made it this far, congratulations, you just survived the Life of a Showgirl without a meltdown. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button before Taylor writes a breakup song about this channel. I'll keep spilling the pop culture tea. No PR filters, no microaggressions, just real talk and chaos. See you in the next one.